Danielle Trujillo. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you. How are you, Matt?
Man, after the sheep crossing today, I was pretty good.
I know. I hope you tell us more about that.
Well, I mean, there's like 1,000 sheep or something. And like Frank Schertz comes by and they got all the sheep. They were supposed to make this right turn off beacon and somebody made a left. And all of a sudden they're in this like big death spiral.
And the dogs are like.
Yeah, the dogs are running around and like people are yelling at them. And then there's like the lead sheep with the guy and like, and they keep making this noise. And I was like, I love ag. I really enjoy the working lands. I also enjoyed the celebration of preserving that, and not just in a token manner, right? Like the sheep have an integral part of land management. Sheep, goats, and we need to embrace that and our ranching community if we are going to continue having great open spaces. Because when we talk about multiple use spaces, we're talking recreation, we're talking forestry, we're talking ranching, and if we don't do those things, if we don't have large land management with integration of ranching and like herding and stuff, we're not going to have recreation opportunities. We're also going to have catastrophic, way more crazy wildfires. Like we're gonna have all of this, all of these problems,
weed issues, all kinds of things that are impacted.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, 100%. You get it. And sheep and goats and different size and different style of animals are all part of that. So it's like, as silly as some people think it is to be like, oh my gosh, you went and saw the sheep crossing. It's like, yeah, but it's also cool to remind everybody that this is still a thing and to make space for it in our growing community.
Yeah, so multiple land use is really, I would say, an important piece of Idaho in general. I mean, I don't know if you've been to North Idaho, but North Idaho is like forestry and mining. Right. And then Southern Idaho, you have a lot more of the agriculture. And that's one state. And we're trying to encapsulate laws that affect both arenas and all the arena that becomes the state of Idaho, and still preserve the favorite public lands that we get to enjoy. Like, it's really quite a interesting climate.
Yes.
Politically, which know.
Yeah, it is. And again, I really appreciate it. And one thing that I hear from ranching people and people engaged in the industry all the time is just like, that's not like telling story and advocating for yourself is not the purview of the rancher.
No,
like they're not like,
they're like, let me do my thing. Okay.
Let me do my thing. Like I got a little mustard on my shirt. Like I got to get on with my life. Like whatever, get out of the road. He put a shirt on. There was a shirt on.
5 days old? I don't know.
I don't know. And even if it was clean this morning, in the first 10 minutes, he's like, well, that's a mess. Yeah. And it's like, you just have functional humans, which this is why I could never be friends with normal people. I could never date a normal person either. Like when I was in college, this is something I realized to myself. When I was in college, I couldn't date just like a student. Because like I met my...
I gotta know more about your life.
I tried, but like it didn't work because they'd be like, well, I normally get up at 11. I'm like, 11? What are you doing? She's like, well, I stay up till like 2. It's like, doing what? Yeah. And I never understood the life where like you spent a half an hour putting on makeup and like you just did. Like my life has always been very, very rigidly defined by difficult pursuits. So like when I meet my wife, it's like her hair's pulled back and it's like still kind of wet from the pool and she's like bags under her eyes.
Like I'm in love.
Yeah, that's pretty much. I have a type.
Yeah, you have a type. It's like slightly complicated, super easy. It's a combo.
It's a combo. Listen, you're the president or executive director?
Executive director.
Of the Cecil Andrus Center.
Yeah, so the Andrus Center for Public Policy is the official title.
The official title.
Yes.
Talk to me about this.
I would love to. So as executive director, I consider it to be an honor to continue the legacy work of Cecil Andrus. And we were talking earlier about Cecil Andrus as someone that a lot of Idahoans that have been here for many years know about, but anyone that's kind of coming into the state maybe don't have the history or the context of what impact he had for the state. And also outside of the state, especially Alaska. He worked for the Secretary of Interior, Jimmy Carter. And during that time, it preserved some of the largest, I think it was 100 million acres in Alaska, which is amazing.
It's wild times.
Yeah. And what's really fascinating about him is he was like he's from Oregon. He wasn't truly an Idahoan from the get-go.
Right.
But when he came to Orofino, I believe it was Orofino, Idaho, working for his father's company, it was in forestry. And then from forestry, he was raising a family. And that family dynamic turns into impact in the community and understanding the value of being a voice in that community. And so he got into politics because of his family dynamic and his ability to connect with people. He was a really unique man because he could remember everybody's names. Everybody. It didn't matter if he met you 5 years ago. He remembered a name and he remembered a fact about you. And he always said it.
You know, I've only heard of one other person similar to that. Bill Clinton.
Oh, really?
Oddly enough, yeah. So I
didn't know
had a friend whose dad was almost the governor, I think, of New Hampshire. Like he lost by 0.5% or something. So he's pretty high up in politics.
Yeah.
And they went and got to meet. He went and got to meet Clinton like at the beginning of Clinton's first term, and his name was Declan, right? So they'd be in this big
Fun name.
reception line. Yeah, there you go. And Clinton, you know, would go down the line shaking people's hand, and he's like goes up and meets Declan, and like Declan's like 9 or something. He's like, "Hey Declan, how you doing?" And he's like, "Oh, good, Mr. President." He's like, what do you like in school, Declan?" He's like, "Oh, I kind of like math, sir." And he's like, "I kind of like math too, Declan."
Oh.
It goes on, right? And then Declan comes back when he's like 16 or something, you know, roughly 7 years later in a reception line. And Clinton gets to him. He's like, "Oh, hey, Declan, how you doing? You still like math?" And he was like, "No, sir, I actually kind of like English." He's like, "Oh, I kind of like English too, Declan." Like moves on. And he just 7 years later is like knew the kid's name, knew the subject he enjoyed, like moved on. And yeah, pretty
Cecil
impressive.
Andrus too. Yeah. I wish
That's
everyone
the
could
only
have a
similarity
formula.
between those two. Let's be clear.
Yeah.
Well, they're both Democrats.
Yes.
Yeah,
But Cease really bridged the Democrat-Republican vibes in order to accomplish the things that mattered.
Yeah.
So I always looked at him from a political perspective in understanding that he had a unique way of connecting or separating parties, or putting them together, I should say, but separating the party lines and making it more about the issues. So I always had so much respect for Cecil D. Andrus. And when I've worked in this community for quite some time, and when I heard about the job opportunity with the Cecil D. Andrus Public Policy Center, I immediately was interested because I love doing things that I'm passionate about. And it would be really an honor to serve kind of the legacy point of Cecil D. Andrus. And so that's kind of how I rolled into the executive director position and continue to do that work today.
When you're talking about bridging gaps, this is something I've heard from a lot of people, that Andrus was capable of bringing together like hyper conservative, you know, total, you know, whatever spectrum you want to say, and the other side for pragmatic policy and like the betterment of Idaho. And I love that concept. I mean, it's essentially what I strive for every single day with my show. It's like, listen, we should all be heard. We don't all have to always agree, but we need to offer each other. Let's just start with dignity and listening and going from there. But that style of policy and governance and bridge building seems to be something that like ended right around the mid-90s, where all of a sudden it was like, no, man, this is a liability. In fact, I heard this was really wild last election season, 24th, the November election. I heard people from the Ada County Central Committee, the Republican Central Committee, say that people shouldn't support the Ada County Republican candidate for sheriff because Democrats supported him too. And now, mind you, I don't know anything about like whether, like, I'm not a political savvy guy, but it didn't kill me, but it really made me pause and think like, okay, hang on a second.
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense.
I don't understand. Like, okay, so a lot of people like him is what you're saying.
So you were right. Like in the 90s, there was a point where division was a way of moving forward agendas. And so division between different parties, Republican Party, Democratic
Pull the
Party.
mic a little closer. We got to hear you more. There you go.
Sure.
You're good. You're good. You're good.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you better. Go.
Okay.
Division is a way to push policy forward.
Yes. Yeah. And that wasn't always the case. And I think that there have been patterns where division was a mechanism, but we saw a big push of division to move forward agendas. So then you have the power or the impact of fear, hate, like true passionate feelings about a topic don't matter as much about the person or the party in which you're standing behind. And that's been a slow burn for several years to the point that we are today, where division is so commonplace we almost don't recognize it. And I do think that, to your point, back in the day, McClure and Andrus were constantly working together to do the things that they needed to do to preserve and conserve our state of Idaho, especially the wild lands. And they worked together, didn't always agree, but always worked together and always took the time to have the conversations, to have that civil dialogue so that they could continue to do the work that really mattered to the state of Idaho, not necessarily to their party lines. And that change is sad. It's very sad to see so much of the impact of what division really does.
When you say they do the work to preserve Idaho, I feel like there's a shift in, like, okay, what makes Idaho great? Now, again, I've been asking this question every day for years. Like, what makes Idaho since I moved here? It's like, why? Like, what happened here? What is this state? Who are the people in it? Like, what are the policies that get put in place? And I've really kind of realized it's like, okay, it's not pragmatic policy that people are going after anymore. It used to be pragmatic relationships and, like, it doesn't matter if it's R or D, right? Obviously, because we had Democratic and Republican parity up until like the early 90s in Idaho. What we went away from is, okay, what's the value of this policy, right? And now we've steered towards, is this is this a Republican thing, right? And again, not looking at the pragmatic nature of it, but just, is it a Republican thing? Like, what plank is it? And that to me is really interesting. It's like, okay, so we don't care about how it affects Idaho as long as you can defend it as being a Republican thing.
Yeah, it's sad. But it doesn't negate the impact of, in the 70s especially, there was really powerful men accomplishing the kind of things that make Idaho what it is today. And I can't help but keep going back to the preservation of our wild lands.
Sure.
But it is an important piece. They could have made, we have the Sawtooth, we have the White Clouds Wilderness, we have the Hells Canyon National Recreation Area. What we don't have is like federal parks where you would have hordes of people coming in and just trampling the land and familiar with it. It was more about preserving the space and continuing to allow it to be wild land rather than for it to be something that was a spectacle for people across the country, I guess you could say, which is also unique about Idaho.
When you say in the 70s, there were like these men that were doing these things, it's my understanding, and again, I'm not a historian in this, but it's my understanding that Andrus was really pushing towards integrating women in policymaking and governance. Is that accurate?
Yeah. But to talk about why Cecil Andrus cared so much about women playing a part, leadership roles in particular, he had 3 daughters. His oldest was Tana, and then Tracy and Kelly. And though they were like about 5 years apart, he had a lot of time and impact seeing what they endured. That's one of the reasons he was passionate about education, because the education system in a small town of Orfino, Idaho was really quite troubling to him. And so that's why he got into politics for his daughters. He had the vision of what education should look like, and what it was inferior at the moment. And so what he did was try to change it. And I think that he did that for his daughters, and he had a powerhouse for a wife as well. Carol was, to this day is very much like, if you want something done, you could talk to Carol and it'll get done. It's kind of she had the momentum as her own person, but you put Cece and her together, it's just an amazing couple, and they accomplished so much, even though she was more behind the scenes. So he relied on the women in his life. And in fact, I believe it was in the 80s, there was a lot of debate over the abortion laws, and his daughter Tracy played a big part in his decision in the end. And it wasn't.
What was his decision in the end?
Don't remember. I know. Baby brain. Baby brain.
I think it was more liberal at that time than it is now.
Yeah, I think it was too. And I can't remember which direction it went. I think it was incest, rape, and
I think
you
still had elective terminations to a point, I believe.
Yeah.
Because you had I've had David Ripley, who is the founder of Idaho Chooses Life on, and his story around why he feels so passionate about ending elective terminations is really like, you hear it and you're like, oh my gosh. And it's a really human story. Yeah. And so you can feel why he's so like, it makes sense why he's committed his life to this. But one of the pieces of it was that he was married to a gal and she got pregnant, and then they were splitting up, getting divorced, and she decided to terminate the pregnancy, and he couldn't do anything about it. And you're like, oh my gosh. And he was like, that was my son. Like, I could see him. And again, he was so that was something that happened, I believe, in the early 90s. So it was far, far more liberal than it is today. Yeah,
that's a good point. Yeah. Well, then it makes sense at the timeline.
Yeah.
But back to kind of the powerhouse women in his life that really impacted the work that he did. Even today, we continue kind of the things that he cared the most about, which is 3 parts. He cared about the environment and public lands, which we still do work with the center related to the environment and public lands, whether that be a report or a conference that might be varying on topics from invasive weeds to sage grouse to climate change. We just most recently did Hills Canyon National Recreation Area, which their 50th anniversary is rapidly approaching. And so in advance of that anniversary, we love to kind of educate the public and have civil discourse around panel discussions around how that was accomplished.
There's a Sawtooth event coming up soon too.
Is there another one?
Yeah, I think there's something in this coming, and it doesn't matter. Yeah, but there's another event. I got invited to it. I was like, I'm invited? Oh my
That's cool. Hey.
Yeah, I know. I get these random invitations. I'm like, oh, I get to come?
I'm special.
I wouldn't go that far, but I did get invited to something.
That's fabulous. That's fabulous.
So again, wilderness things.
Yeah. So he was very passionate about environment and public lands. And so that's an arm of what the center still does. And it's so that the general public, but really, I mean, the whole country could benefit from understanding how we preserved our lands, why we did, what the impact is, what the difference is between the preservation in Tennessee versus the preservation in Idaho. And you can clearly see the impacts. So having panel discussions, having speakers that are, experts at that topic and title, and varying those topics and titles always around environment and public lands, continues to allow people to see kind of the vision and importance of environment and public lands in the state of Idaho and beyond. And so that's an arm we really are passionate about, obviously.
And what I think is to just tack onto that, what I think is very interesting is the preservation of public lands here is not preservation for lands just in the abstract, right? Like, this is going to be our thing, and we're going to like take up this mantle, and like we're going to work really hard, and just like nobody touch the grass, nobody, do not walk over there, right? And that's something that's like, no, we need to preserve this for humans, right? Like, we need to have this for our betterment, because again, I think conservationists in a lot of different areas of the country give conservation a really bad name because they're essentially like anti-humans. They're like, we have screwed up all this stuff. We have damaged all this. Like, it's like, yeah, I mean, maybe I'm part of that, but like, I like me, I like you. Like, I don't want us to disappear, right? That's terrible. Like, I want you to have a beautiful family, and I want to continue on with my beautiful family. And I hope that they, make babies, and like, I like humans, right? And if I had to pick between humans and like that meadow, I'm picking humans, right? Like, we're not, and again.
But isn't it lovely when a human can see that meadow and enjoy the peace and serenity of it, uninterrupted by like a landscape that's built on it? Or,
yes. We need to preserve these things for, the food we eat. We need the meadow for, grazing. We need the meadow for recreation, right? We need kids playing soccer and stuff on grass. Like, we need the meadow for all of these different purposes. And that's really important, but let's be human centered, right? And let's look at conservation from let's work together to preserve this, because it does have a very important reason in the end. Yeah. Just a thought like that.
Yeah. Well, and human centered is a good way to put it. Cause I would say, Cecil Andrus, who his friends called him Cease. So every once in a while I call him Cease.
No disrespect, Cease.
No, it's a very endearing thing for, I was really
his
close
granddaughter
with his
calls
daughter.
him Cease too.
Yeah. Monica.
Yeah, she's great.
We love Monica. She's fabulous.
She's great.
Yeah,
she's got an RBF. Like, whenever we're doing a podcast, she's just sitting there like,
Yes.
Somebody saw a clip and they're like, she does not look happy. I'm like, no, she's great. That's just her face.
That's just her face.
And she's got the glasses on and she's just like,
Yes.
she's the best.
Oh,
Like talking to her is so, I mean, it's
enlightening.
It's so enlightening every time. And her perspectives and her articulation of Idaho being the Wild West, that this is one of the reasons that I wanted to talk to you about this, is because people like myself move here and they're like, I know what Idaho is and I need to preserve what I know Idaho is. It's like, you don't.
No.
We don't know. Like Cecil Andrus, a Democrat, was like fundamental to shaping the state that we now get to enjoy. And we think we're coming in with this very specific snapshot of what made this state what it is. And you're missing the mark. It was collaboration and pragmatic governance.
Yeah. I think that's my favorite part, is that it was collaboration all across the board. And that's what we're missing nowadays, obviously. But that's also what we want to continue with the center is, okay, what does collaboration look like? It looks like discussion. It looks like stories. It looks like discussions across the room with deeply differing values, but you have to have the discussions. And in order to really kind of incorporate those discussions, you got to have somebody up at the top of the stage every once in a while that's speaking at you so that you can speak to each other and really kind of hammer it out in your own brain. Like, what are you thinking? Was that something you care about? Why do you care about it? What's the, so it starts a momentum for understanding what Idaho means to you, at these environment public lands events that we do.
Yeah, it's really, it's a big thing. That was, so again, you said 3 pillars or like 3 big things.
That's just one pillar.
That's just one.
Yeah. So the other is education, because I talked earlier about his daughters and when they were in Orfino, they were struggling with the decisions being made by their senator really to push forward. It's a long story, so I won't go into it. But essentially, he saw the discrepancies, he saw the challenges, and realized that he could do something about it. And so his passion for early education in particular, he's the reason that kindergarten came to the state of Idaho at that stage. And because of that impact, the long-term impact of that legacy piece, we still debate it today. We still struggle with what that really means, but it made an impact and he cared about it. So he always wanted to have an early childhood learning conference or report or something that would bring understanding to the importance of education, especially in the early years in development. And so we typically offer a report or a conference related to that as well. And we haven't done so in a few years because it's been such a complicated environment in education that it would cause more division than it would open dialogue. Like with environment, we want to bring that open dialogue, right? In education, it's too conflict driven that people are not going to be as receptive. And so we really have to time that. What
I think is interesting, that people I think are, and I totally get what you're saying, because I've been talked to a lot of people about education. And I think there are 2 separate things that I think are being conflated as one, which is the delivery mechanism system of education and the value of education, right? So I think most people who object to public education are objecting to the system of education, and that gets conflated with the value of education. And it's like, no. Yeah. We should all be valuing education. And if you have problems with the system of education, that's fine. But like, if we want less, here's a really funny tie together, which is people criticize Idaho for having like high incarceration rates. It's like, okay, first off, if they deserve to be incarcerated, I don't really want lower incarceration rates, because like I know a place that shall not be named that worked really hard to let people out early or not incarcerate people that otherwise should have been. That's bad. There are repercussions. Like, so let's not go down that road. Second, if we want fewer people in the prison system, we have to make a world that produces fewer people that must rely on criminal activity to survive.
Education.
Right. Like, and the joke is always, look, how many computer science PhDs do you know that elect for prostitution? It's like, none, because they're infinitely employable. I'm like, listen, I could do anything but that. And I'm going to go ahead and like, I'm a code that takes a lot, that's going to be air conditioned and like that, because you have a skill set that's marketable. And if you strip everything away, did you ever see that movie Monster? It was like 2003, 2004, Charlize Theron.
I didn't see it.
Dude, it was a really intense movie, but
it was a true story.
Yes. Yeah. And did a better job than I have ever seen of portraying somebody that failed to have options. And so then you have this woman in her like 30s who has utilized her prostitution skill, you know, and then at one point tries to like get a job, and she essentially gets laughed out of the temp agency. They're like, can you type? Can you do these? Like, can you do basic things to get this job that's not related to this? And she was like, no, I don't really have any skills. And then she gets picked up by a cop when she's like walking down the street, and then he abuses her. Like, all these terrible things happen to this woman. But again, that's what you're left with if we don't have education. Yeah. Now, whatever the system is that we need to develop to deliver that education, okay, great. But can we just first agree, like, literacy, early literacy is one of the greatest correlations to not being in jail or being in jail, right? Like, if you can read by 3rd or 4th grade sufficiently, and then you can open up the world of anything to yourself because you can read, your probability of going to jail by 20 or between 20 and 30 like drops like 10x or something. It's pretty wild.
Well, and there's the school of life, and then there's like the school system. Right. And there's a complement of both, right? You know, so if you have everyone that's homeschooled, there's some lack thereof in understanding the culture and the climate, and acclimating themselves to a work environment and self-sustaining and all of that. So education is such that's a big one. But my point is, like,
if you have people that are secluded,
matter.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Because
I know a lot of homeschool people, and they work extremely hard to have social areas. Yeah. So I don't think people that are, I don't think homeschooling is necessarily synonymous with like you missed out on like how to work with other people.
Not at all. And if I implied that, I'm so sorry.
No,
sorry.
Okay. No, it's good. We're good. So bottom line is,
just to be clear, my sister-in-law and my brother, they homeschool.
And you hate them, but whatever.
No, I love them. They're the best.
Yeah. I think it takes a really, like, I don't think my wife and I we're both tutors through our entire careers. Yeah. And so like I could tutor anybody all the way like through calculus. Like that's totally fine. But dude, I could not homeschool my kids. Like I think it takes you got to have that real special relationship. And you know, both parties have to be working really well, and God bless the people that can make it happen, man.
Yeah. It's a hard
tough one. Yeah,
I've seen at Christmas time, my whole family usually kind of congregates and they'll stay for like 2 months because they're homeschooled. They have 2 kids and they're homeschooled, so they can stay for 2 months in December. So December through January. Yeah. And so I get to observe like the homeschool experience and the schedule, and they bring, you know, they have their laptop and they have courses that they have to do at certain times. And so there is structure there. And I had no idea until I got to see it firsthand. It was much better experience than I had heard of from others. And so I think there's a big depth of what homeschooling can be and how it can be implemented.
Yeah. I have a buddy who has 4 boys. Okay. It's 4. It's wild.
Wow.
And they're like 12, 10, 9, 7.
So close.
Yeah. And they're all these like towhead blonde kids. They're so cool. Like I really enjoy my friend and his wife.
They could start a soccer team.
The joke was that if I had one more kid, because I have 3 boys and he has 4 boys, I'm like, we could have filled out an 8-man boat.
Perfect.
Yeah. Because we're both, she's a buddy of mine from rowing.
I want this to happen for you.
I want this for us.
You could adopt.
The thing that is interesting about him is he was in Seattle for some time and did not care for the education system there. And he was like, okay, so they went into a Catholic school system, and then that was costing like $1 gajillion. So his wife, who's very, very bright and very competent, started homeschooling. And my friend Max was telling me, like, listen, man, she gets through the entire school day in like 2 hours, 2.5 hours. And his wife is on point. So like, I believe 1,000% over that. Like she was burning through it, but she was like, I can't do this. So you can get through the material really fast. And if you push the school day to like 4 hours instead of 2 or 2.5, then you get through school really fast, right? Like everybody knows somebody who graduated at 15 and went on to college and was like done with college at 19 or something. And you're like, you can do it. It takes a special set.
It takes a special set.
So Wildlands education.
Yeah.
What's the third?
Leadership. So, and in particular, women in leadership, I would say, is that the third arm. And again, I talked about the value of the women in his life and Cecil Andrus's life, his wife, Carol, and his 3 daughters. And the things that he saw in the world dynamic that they had to experience at the same time he was experiencing, success, they might be experiencing something completely different. And he saw that so clearly, and he wanted so badly, as any father would, for their children to be successful and have no hurdles that are unbeatable.
Right.
And he didn't see a clear way to make change in politics per se. And so instead he would bring or empower the voices of women for other women to look to, right? So we still continue to do that work today as well. We have our largest event of the year is Women in Leadership. It's always a sellout event. And though it's titled Women in Leadership, the history of that, it's trademarked as such, was so that women could be highlighted, those that were successful. We're talking about like the Secretary of Interior kind of level women that would come to the state of Idaho to speak at events that he would host, just so they could kind of talk about like their story. Right. And it goes back to the value of storytelling. And storytelling really is a way for someone, whether that be any gender, to look to the stage and say, wow, that could be me. And her story is something I can relate to. It doesn't matter the journey. What matters is the empowerment, right? So when I'm cultivating our speaker lineup, I'm always asking the question of like, okay, you might be someone that's very important in your arena, but what's the story that you haven't told? And the power of that story. And so my job, I take very seriously to kind of dig in and better understand the person that's sitting across from me, so that the story that they bring to our audience has an impact that's related to women in leadership. How is their story going to set a fire or inspire others? And others is everybody. So I've had a few people say recently, you need to change the title of the conference from women in leadership. And I think to myself, A, it's trademarked. B, it's not about having more women empowerment or that feminine power approach. It's about understanding the discrepancies that did occur or still occur, and how to not let them stop somebody that might have a vision, might have a dream, might want to be an entrepreneur. So we're really trying to inspire and empower others. Women, men, doesn't matter. The point is that the women that are on stage, the ones that we are highlighting on stage, are always women that have a story to tell that is very unique. And they might be an actress, an opera singer, an astronaut, Secretary of Interior. We're hoping Deb Holland comes this year, so cross your fingers for me. It's a pretty amazing thing to see anyone really share the vulnerability of who they are and why they are the way they are, how they got there, what they endured to get there, and seeing yourself in that storyline. And that's kind of the fun part about how women in leadership can make a lot of impact. And then we supplement it with skill building topics, which range from finances to imposter syndrome to like it's a wide range of topics, so that over the course of 2 days, empowered people get to leave the room.
I have to do you a solid. Couple things. First off, when you fix your headphones and you do this, your hair poofs up like a peacock. So take it here and then slide it back. There you go. Your hair's back again.
My hair is back again.
I've debated over the years of like telling people, and now I'm like, I got to help a girl out. Like,
it's never. If it's like a peacock.
Yeah, because you come forward and everything bunches up in the front, so it's like.
Well, I'm surprised. I must move my head a lot when I talk. I didn't realize that because it's just like sliding.
Yeah, but I mean, like we. You like nod and stuff. It's like
I
affirmation.
Nod a lot.
Keep going. I mean, people. I do the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
I really, what you said at the end, which is like women in leadership and inspiring men and women. Mm-hmm. This is something that is really, really important to me. Particularly because I have a very strong wife, and I also noticed when I was when my oldest son was like 6, He was in kindergarten, I remember. We saw Moana, right? And we were like slow to the take. It was on the TV. Anyway, so we watch it, and I actually watched it first. I was like, oh, snap. This is a good movie. And I showed it to him, and he was obsessed with Moana for like months. He did a Moana birthday party. They had the grass, like, full pajama grass suit thing, like, and he would like go to school and be like, did I run as fast as Moana? Right. And it's like, and it wasn't about her being a woman or Maui being a man. It was about this person who was going through this human experience. And it was like, yeah, Moana is a girl, but like that wasn't about the story. And I was like, God, like that's great. It's great that he sees power and value and that type of redeeming your parents, but as a woman, right? Like, and again, not because I was like, go woman. I was just like, it's so cool. Because I had a neighbor who was like this real feminist lady, and she was like, yeah, and Moana's a girl. I'm like, oh, why do you have to make it? Like, it's just a great story, right? Yeah. Like, it doesn't have to be that kind of thing. There's not an adversarial relationship that I wanted him to develop with, like, it needs to be woman versus not. It's just like, I thought it was cool. And then my wife is raising 3 boys, and she was in water polo all through college. She was a D1 athlete. She was captain of the team.
Boy,
she was a monster.
That's a tough sport.
It was tough. Now, again, she played on a women's water polo team, and they were all women. Like that was like early 2000s, so before anyway. But the point is, she found it again recently. She found a master's team that she started playing with, and she has gone to several co-ed masters tournaments with these like 250-pound dudes who are like 50 and huge. Yeah. And she went to one recently where she was the only woman there, and she's lighting it up and like scoring goals, and she's this integral part of the team it's just so great having my boys see their mom do that. And it means a lot to me, where it's like she is contributing, and it should be an inspiration, not just to women, but to all people, you know? And I don't know. I think it's very hard to even articulate why it's relevant to me. But when you talk about it, it's like, yeah, we should be inspired for both men and women. Like if there was a little dude on a team of giant dudes and like he came through, and it was like, it would be inspiring to see, my wife on there with like these giant dudes, and she's scoring and she's stealing the ball and she's, part of the engine. That to me is just fantastic. It's like, we should celebrate people. Yeah. Like we should celebrate people. And it's cool to see people that are worthy of being celebrated on all sides of it. Like that's just, man, it's really important to me. Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, it's important to me as well. And it's one of those things that, we still have about 90% of the attendance of women in leadership are women, but the remaining 10% are 100% present. And I love to see that. I love to see that everyone that is in that room is engaging with everything that it has to offer. And that's the whole point, I mean, we're providing a mechanism for empowerment and understanding and seeing a vision even for yourself through the others, through the storytelling that I mentioned earlier. And that has power. So anytime someone comes to me and says like, you got to change the title for women in leadership, I'm like, no, I don't. I'm going to fight that one, because it is women that are telling their story. If we want to do a man version of it where it's men telling their story, we can call it that too. Like it's okay to have, there's plenty of spaces for everyone.
Yes. And this is an intentional approach to bringing together. And I put a lot of work into the diversity of our lineup, so that it's, for example, I really take to heart having voices that are not heard as often being able to tell their story. Native voices, Native American voices, African American voices. Coming in soon. Do you?
Yes.
Oh my gosh, you're going to love hearing their storytelling. That's amazing.
I have been trying for a long time, and finally I got connected. I'm like, oh, hell yeah. Because again, as hard as it is to understand Idaho, for somebody especially like me that moved here from out of state, it is impossible to understand the tribes. Oh, and again, like perhaps there are, museums or other things of that nature, but where most people consume and form their worldviews, consume information and form their worldviews, I do not see a lot of information about that. Yeah. And it's like, this needs to be understood. Like we need to preserve this and transmit it and help people understand the relationship.
Well, it's the history of this land. Like they know it better than anyone because they were the stewards of this land. And I feel I'm grateful to hear that you get the opportunity to speak to him. I hope you can chunk up like 4 hours of time because you're going to not want to stop listening. I mean, honestly, there's so much that can be shared about the culture, the history, the respect, the leadership. There's so many avenues that I take very, very to heart, I guess you could say. And is one of the reasons why, since I took this job, I was like, we have got to have every year at least one Native American speaker on the stage. And it's important. It's important.
It is. It is.
Yeah.
And it's such a, again, it's one of those things that is so easily dismissed, you know, and I struggle with how to communicate to everybody. Right. And really communicate in a way that reflects me. That's a very, very hard thing to do. And I think somebody was criticizing me lately. I got this thing. I get a bunch of hate. It's all right. I don't really care. But
You're
one person,
resilient.
oh yeah. And it's like, I don't take it, but every time somebody gets mad at me, I invite them in for coffee. And of course they're not interested in like meeting me. They just want, they're very upset and they find access to me and they're like, I'm going to let this guy know because he embodies everything I dislike. It's like, maybe I don't.
Yeah.
Maybe if
we
you
could
just
go down
came
a
in,
rabbit trail about that.
yeah, right. Like, why don't you just come and have coffee?
Yeah.
And like, I'd love to hear what your experience is, but like, I don't think I'm what you think. Like, you've seen like clips of me on Instagram, and you derive this entire like world narrative around like what my life has been, right? And it is very difficult to figure out to balance, you know, what I'm trying to express in real time, right? Because these are not planned interviews. It's like, I don't, you know, express yourself, but also what is the right thing? Like, I hear that there are people, like I used to work in college admissions, and I hear that there are people that are, you know, like, let's say just classically Caucasian, just random people who are like, hey, like, I feel like I'm being overlooked because I'm Caucasian. It's like, okay, I hear that. I hear that people feel that way. And by the way, I worked in college admissions, so I know there are a lot of people that I worked with that had a story about being like first generation Ethiopian, and that got them access to some fantastic school that they quantitatively, like they shouldn't academically. It's like, you're not like, you're going to have, and the schools knew it. So they're like, okay, not only are you accepted, but we're going to get you into these tutoring and bridge programs. So like you stay up to snuff and you can graduate. And for somebody looking from the outside, they're like, well, how come I don't get that?
I work hard.
Yeah, I work hard. And then from the gal who's first generation Ethiopian who lives in a 2-bedroom apartment with her mom and her 3 siblings, it's like, okay, and I get her position too, which is like, I did the best I could. Like, you know, should I be relegated to only lower end university? It's like, well, gosh, man, everybody has a position. And, you know, again, I think we need to,
one answer.
There's no one answer. And I think we all really want it to be one answer. I think people want to say like, we shouldn't have something focused on genders. So like, we shouldn't have like women in leadership. Right. And that's a difficult play because it's like, okay, but what about hearing stories? Like, what about my, you know, wife on a co-ed water polo team being successful and having a contribution? Like, that's a really cool story. And I want my boys to see that. You know, it's such a tricky thing. Like, I get where both sides are coming from, but it's like, listen, I think if people just show up in good faith and show up wanting to celebrate humanity, then I think there's room for everything.
Yeah, I think there's room for everything as well. I completely agree with that. And I feel I'm okay with my niche. I'm okay with my women in leadership niche, and I know the power of it. I know the impact that it has, and I know it is in alignment with Cecil Andrus's legacy and the things that he valued in his daughters and in his wife, and the things he wishes that he could have been able to share their stories. And so we continue to do that. And it's a beautiful thing that you can come to, or you don't have to. Like, that's the other part of it is, you know, you can hate on something, but you don't have to participate in it. That's really like your stance. That's your choice. Doing away with things that you don't appreciate or think align with your values isn't always the best course of action for the overall society. And I really hope that we have a better equilibrium in the next 20 years of understanding that, but we'll never have an answer.
Yeah. It is interesting that there is now a movement to where it's like, if I don't like it, it shouldn't have a right to exist.
Yeah.
And that to me, and again, I do not know a lot, but I'm going to go out on a limb and say that's not really Idaho. Like, that's not the Wild West. That's not the, hey, your neighbor has a fence for a reason. Yeah. They're doing their thing over there. You do your thing over here. No problem. You can like them. You can dislike them. But if you dislike them, you don't get to just like say they don't have a right to exist however they want to exist. Like, that's the Wild West. This is not a nanny state. This is a, personal liberty and autonomy. Right. And that's, I think it's a more national thing, right? Like, I think people really just categorically are like, we need to stop these other people from existing. And I think it obviously appears on both sides, people.
Yes. And then we go back to that shift to division as a way to move politics.
Yeah.
That this is kind of the repercussions of that momentum.
Yeah.
And I really hope that changes.
I hope so too. Listen, I know it's a working day. I just wanted to have you come in and let's start the conversation. I'm really excited about connecting with historians from the, Andrus Center for Public Policy. Is it public policy or just policy?
Andrus Center for Public Policy.
I got it right.
You did.
Oh my God. Because I did have
I'm impressed.
Brush the shoulder off.
Yeah.
These are stories and pieces of Idaho history that need to be preserved and transmitted in all formats. Right. And that's like, I have a very specific, goofy, podcast format, but I had Dr. Wakehill in who you introduced me to, that she's part of this center as well. And she came in talking about parachuting beavers, and I was like, this is so damn awesome.
I know.
Like, it's so great that we can grab these historians and dig into these things and preserve Idaho in this way. So
yeah, she's amazing.
Yeah.
She's the Cecil Andrus Endowed Chair. So does research related, and recently did interviews of all of the women. So Carol and the 3 daughters. So she's going to likely build on that as the legacy of the women in the Andrus family. So she has a very in-depth understanding of what the family dynamic and the challenges on the backside of the curtain, because they were a very private family. As public as they were being in politics, they were a very private family. And she got to peek behind the curtain and kind of really understand the nuances of what made them so successful as a family unit. And I hope she shares that, because it's a beautiful thing. And I think she has a level of respect, like I do, for the family, but for Cecil Andrus in particular. And she does a wonderful job doing the work that we get to do together. So,
man, that's cool.
Yeah.
Well, again, thank you for coming in today. Thank you for kicking off
pleasure.
this conversation. I'm really, I'm excited to see where it goes. So let's do it again.
Okay. Sounds good. Thanks, Matt.